Jeff Martin here. Briefing video for the meeting on Monday, March 13th, 2023, 6 p.m. Regular board meeting. Normal stuff at the beginning, call to order, invocation, pledge, roll call, approval of the agenda, approval of past meeting minutes, which there is 2 because we had a working session. Treasurer's report, paying the bills, fire department report, planning commission report, maintenance and grounds report, normal stuff. Yeah, we get into our first public comment section, which is on agenda items for 3 minutes, and we'll get into that because that comes up twice in this meeting. There's 2 items on that. Our decision items. First, we have the fire millage renewal resolution. It's resolution 2023-12, and this is to put on the August ballot the renewal for fire operating millage, right? If you want a fire department to exist, you have to come up with money from somewhere. That is normally done through an operating millage. Next, and I'm going to talk about these together a little bit. Next, we have the fire millage increase resolution. It's resolution 2023-13. And the basic idea of this is that, the calls have been increasing and they go up and down, every year. So the up looks a little bit like a stock market. And nevertheless, it's increasing. The culture overall is somewhat less interested in that field. And I know that even locally, I've spoken to the 8th graders the last 2 years, all the 8th graders. And the first year, I very explicitly asked if anyone had thought about becoming firefighters. And you're talking to 13, 14-year-olds, somewhere in that range. And only a few out of hundreds of students had even ever thought about it. So there's less interest there, more interest in, video game playing wasn't a career not that long ago. And so some of that has changed. And the culture in emergency medicine, or in our area in emergency medicine, is changing a little bit too. Longer response times for ambulances and those types of things. And a massive amount of the calls that our fire department goes on end up being medical calls, right? So we could very easily make all the fire calls by dropping medical calls. But I think that's a disservice to the citizens as well. And so rather than go in that direction, if we can generate more money, because it's not in the budget now, we don't have the money to put on full-time firefighters. It's not possible within the fire department budget. And so we need a millage increase. Now, I'm trying to keep that very reasonable, which makes it a little tight for myself and the chief to work out the budget for adding full-time firefighters. But I think it's a very reasonable ask of 0.85 mils. That's the increase. But I didn't want to have an increase. I didn't want to put this off either because it's important. It's timely because of the fire department, how many calls are going on now, how difficult that is. And so I wanted to get it done. That's why we're asking for it this year. Maybe should have asked for it last year, right? But asking for it this year nevertheless. And so I don't want to have a vote on an increase of 0.85 mils. And then a couple of years from now, have a vote on the renewal for the operating millage that's already in place. And so we can do those 2 votes together. Because it's an increase of over 0.5, it will be 2 separate things on the ballot. So one will be the fire operating renewal. There's a vote for that. And the second one will be a fire operating millage increase. So 2 separate things on the ballot. But I think that's better than just having a vote on fire every couple of years. That's very confusing because it's like, why is fire continually asking for money every few years, even though one would be an increase and then one would be a renewal? Might as well just do them together. So that's what those are. If those are passed, that'll be on the ballot in August. Next, we have the land sale request on Poppy and Calumet. Next, we have the deputy treasurer, putting the new deputy treasurer, Heather, on the Choice One bank accounts. Choice One likes having meeting minutes for that type of thing. Next, this comes around to the public comment. 2 things in public comment in this meeting, but the first one is public comment resolution 2023-17. And this started because at the end of the last regular meeting, McCabe was rambling for a long time up here. And the board and the people in the audience wanted me to stop it. Like, let's move on with our lives at this point. He's complaining. He's trying to harass the township into giving him a tax exemption on his property. And which is appealing. You can go through the proper channels. You can't harass me into giving you a tax break. That won't happen. And so like everyone understood, why he's a bad person, trying to get stuff enforced on people to cause these various problems. And everyone said they understood. So I was like, that's fine. We can adjourn the meeting. So I took a motion and adjourned the meeting. And you can do that. You can have limitations, time limitations are normal. 3 minutes is normal in meetings. And you're supposed to have like a policy on them ideally. Now on our meeting agendas, I put on the first public comments, right? And I don't need a public comment at the beginning. You only need one public comment through the thing. I don't have to have the agenda approved by the board. I added that when I got in. And so I like having some of these things to be public facing, essentially. If anyone wants to debate me on anything, talk about anything, we can sit down and have our own recorded session and post it on YouTube. And we've done that. One person has taken me up on the offer, so I think that's all good. But I listed on here for the first public comment is on agenda items in 3 minutes, because at first I didn't even have it on agenda items, and then people would just ramble about other stuff for 10 minutes. And it's like, we're not even getting to business. There's a point to the meeting. There's stuff we're trying to get to. You got people waiting on their things. So on agenda items seems reasonable there. The 3 minutes is a pretty normal thing. And then I have a public comment at the end, and I put 3 minutes there too, because it's reasonable. Like everyone wants to move on with their life and get to some other things. But at my discretion, I usually allow people to go over to say their piece, right? Everyone wants to say their piece. I think that's very reasonable. Some people are just looking at trying to be a nuisance. It's a very weird strategy to get what you want. I don't see how it works, but I guess essentially you can do that, right? You can kind of try to bully some people into something. Basically, I guess it's very weird. And as politicians, a lot of times the politicians will give, right, because they don't want to come off as bad in some way, so they'll give into that type of stuff. So I've heard with McCabe specifically that he's done it. He's essentially been able to harass some municipalities into giving him special tax breaks or whatever. But I don't play that game. So I've got 3 minutes there too, just in case someone is rambling for too long. Right, and so I've got those on there with the board approving the agenda. Obviously, the board has approved those being on the agenda as well. But ideally, you probably have a specific other policy. And so he had tried to FOIA request that, right? He's obviously trying to make the case that he wasn't supposed to be cut off there after his 3 minutes. And that a policy exists. I can find record of the township having passed it in 2011. I think it was resolution number 9. But when I was going through the resolution book, it's not in there. Right? So I could find 8, I could find 10, but there wasn't the one that was supposed to be in the middle. I'm guessing because someone pulled it out, probably years ago for some other situation to show somebody and never put it back. Which is part of why I would like to, work on digitizing the records and that type of stuff and making them searchable. Huge projects, and then you got people that are just literally attempting to waste everyone's time here, like McCabe. So. My view of people has not become more positive holding this position. We can say that's for sure. Strongly the other way. And so that's why we're seeing, though, a public comment resolution, 2023-17. I wrote it, and it basically just says these things because we want to hear public comment and we also want to have orderly meetings. Then we can put limitations on the agenda, such as on agenda items and 3 minutes, that type of thing, just as a double check. Next, we have the road commission contract. This is for local projects, yearly contract if the township wants to contribute anything to those types of things. So we have that written up. I believe it's about $200,000 on each side split. Next, we have the Cedar Creek Fire Department contract. And this is because Cedar Creek doesn't have a fire department. So Houghton Fire Department covers the 18 square miles on the other side of the township. We cover 10 square miles in this northwest corner. And then Muskegon Charter covers the 8 square miles in the southwest corner. And with these, we've got it spaced out over 3 years. So the contract is over 3 years, with a reasonable increase on each one. And the Dalton, Houghton, and Muskegon Charter Fire Departments got together on those, along with Cedar Creek, obviously, and coordinated the payments and that type of thing. Next, we have the sewer rate increase resolution 2023-16. And this is because obviously when I came in, there was that the sewer was going broke and wasn't being properly handled. And so to do that, to make up that what would have ended up being a couple $1 million gap, we ended up selling property and putting $500,000, allocating $500,000 of that increased revenue to that sewer fund. And then we increased rates quite a bit last year, right? It was a big jump. And then what the analysis had said is that if you do all that in that year, then you should just have to raise it 4% per year after that. So that's what's proposed in here, a 4% increase. So an REU is a normal residential house, is how they calculate it as. It's a very old system, not necessarily great, probably better to have flow meters and that type of thing. Nevertheless, most of our places are on the REU system. And so it's 40 right now, after the increase from last year, it's $40 per REU, and this will increase it to $41.60 per REU, right? 4% increase. Next, we have the Thunderbird Special Use Resolution 2023-11. And this one is, they went to the Planning Commission. They had requested, it's under new ownership, right? There were a number of issues last year with the new ownership that was last year. And probably luckily, they end up not doing it again. So I went from Blackmer back to Sprague and then to the new people. They're taking it over and, they're trying to get everything arranged. So hopefully they have a good season ahead. They requested up till midnight if they need it for a time extension, because in their special use, it's at 11. And that, which we've done the last couple of years, we've seen that request from different people. The sports complexes are odd, right? They're an oddity because they go through the Planning Commission, but the Planning Commission isn't the final word, which it is on a lot of things. Or if they send an ordinance to us, we can accept or reject it, but we're not supposed to amend it. This is different because the power wholly lies with the board itself. And so the Planning Commission talked with them, ended up deciding on 11:45. So this resolution was written up as 11:45 as kind of the compromise for 1 year. There's also concessions in there. The concessions were passed as being able to be permanent. And so we'll see how it goes, because it's more of a political thing than I'd expect coming into office. But nevertheless, we'll see that resolution there. Next, we have the Spark Grant hearing and resolution 2023-14. And this, we've been talking about the Spark Grant. It's about Beagle Field on Tyler. And so the Fleece and Vanderbrink have the proposal and stuff written up, they're ready to go. We have to pass a resolution on it. I've included letters. The packet's 105 pages. I did not separate out a reference packet, so just a single packet. I included reference letters that Christy has been able to get from people supporting the project, and it's quite a few. So those are in here too. Next, we have the Water Policy Board alternate, because I was stepped off of the Water Policy Board, and Tracy was the alternate, but now she's the full-time member there, which means we now don't have an alternate. And Christy said she's willing to be the alternate on it, so that's the way I have it written up. Next, we have Staple and Westlake Streetlight Resolution 2023-15. This is apparently a bus stop for multiple different kids from different houses, and decently dark there early in the morning. And so a streetlight had been requested. I've been waiting for this to come through for quite a while. It usually takes a few months for consumers to get the engineering done, that type of thing. And we need to pass a resolution for it and approving the signing of the contract. So I have both those in here. Next, we have the board review poverty exemptions. It seems like we'd be able to just pass this once and then it would be in effect for like the federal updates and that type of stuff moving forward, but you have to pass it annually because those numbers slightly change. Next, we have Central Road Second Resolution 2023-09. This is the one that in the last meeting we had the hearing, right? So the hearing is done. I've gotten one more written objection, so I have included that in here. And we'll see how it goes. I inquired into if it would make sense to do it as just like purely voluntary type of thing. And on everything the government touches, you have, especially this type of special assessment road process, you have a tragedy of the commons, right? Because it's a shared resource. with a free rider problem. So if someone gets out of it, obviously they're a free rider on there. And that, I mean, it'll cause a cascade effect most likely because the money gets redistributed if anyone's off there to the other people, right? So probably not a great process, on people getting along, but people aren't very good at that anyways. And I also inquired into doing it proportionally, according to the values of the properties, but that ends up with a huge difference in the amount of payment, which really doesn't correlate with use. So that probably doesn't make sense either. And so we're just seeing the same thing again that we saw last month. And if that doesn't pass, obviously we won't move on to the next one, but if that does pass, Central Road Third Resolution 2023-10. And this is for essentially, it establishes the next hearing, right? Which you could have the next month, which would be the final hearing of the process. And so that's in here as well. Next, we have the senior millage allocation, and we have not received the money from the county for the senior millage allocation yet. And so hopefully that's coming soon because we already had snowplow services for seniors over the winter. And then what we did last year, and the way I have it written up in here, is that whatever is left over after the snowplowing, we put to the Age Well Safe Seniors to go after senior scammers program. So the way I have it written up in here at least. Next, we have the ZBA alternate. And so we had a number of people left. We had 3 people that didn't get on the board review for tax exemptions. I reached out to those 3 people to see if they would like to be an alternate on the Zoning Board of Appeals. 2 of them said yes. So Lori and Mark, so I have their information in here on putting someone as the alternate on the ZBA. Next, we have McCabe FOIA appeal hearing. And so this is a different FOIA than the one we saw last month that he was appealing. This one was about that policy about the public comment. And so same type of thing. Next, we have discussion items, budget adjustments. There were just a few things on here. I did not include the full budget again. I don't think that's necessary. We'll have the annual meeting and the budget on the 18th. March 18th, it's Saturday, starting at 2 p.m. There'll be technically 2 meetings right there, the annual meeting of the electors and then the budget meeting. And for this, we had talked in the last working session about increasing the capital expenditures on the cemetery by $5,000. And then there's 2 other adjustments that I know of that need to be made so far. One is on marijuana revenue, a tax marijuana revenue is just over $50,000. So we'll have to include that as a separate revenue line item. And then I had condensed the Metro Act money and the local community stabilization money in the revenue because local community stabilization runs the Metro Act stuff down. That happened a number of years ago. So I didn't see a reason to have those separately, but had asked, Tracy had mentioned, and I double checked with the auditor that it would probably make sense to keep those separate, and the auditor agrees. And so I'll separate those 2 numbers back out individually. So just the 3 adjustments there I wanted to update people on. Then we're back around to our second public comment / board comment session. 3 minutes was written on here, which is funny because we'll have covered that twice in the meeting at that point. And then we're on to adjournment. So if anyone has any questions, thoughts, ideas, comments, concerns, feel free to reach out. My direct line of office is area code 231-332-6700 or email supervisor@daltontownship.org. Otherwise, this is Jeff Martin. See you at the meeting or whenever I talk to you next.